Hello, and thank you again for joining us on BrothaSpeak. We really appreciate you stopping by to hear what the brothers have to say about the most pressing issues of our society. I am your host. My name is Heber Brown. To my left, we have our good brother Tyrone Keys, and on my right, we have our good brother Ted Smith. We want to pick up on a discussion we were having in the previous show. We were talking about the war in Iraq, an issue that has gripped the nation. It's really, I believe, one of the top 5 or so issues that I believe every conscious American is thinking about right now. On today, the day we are taping, we are on the day of Dr. King's holiday, national holiday. And so while we were talking in the last show about President Bush and his plan, we want to give some time at this point to Dr. King and his activity and involvement in the war of his generation and his time and what he had to say about it. Ted, you were talking to that a little bit. Go ahead and finish that so we can have, or continue with that, so we can continue this dialogue about Dr. King and the war.
Well, what I would like to urge just everyone to do in a tradition of Dr. King's birthday, whenever you think about Dr. King, you think about the I Have a Dream speech, you think about the Montgomery bus boycott, you think about pre-1963 and before Dr. King. But my question is, why not the later years of his life did the media never try to portray about Dr. King? I think that they are trying to trick us and to hide us and to themselves control the legacy of Dr. King. There's a particular speech on April 4th, 1967 at Riverside Church that I would urge everyone to try to get, where Dr. King called the United States the world's greatest purveyor of violence. And that was true then, and it is true today. Everyone wanted to look at his racial analysis inside of America, but Dr. King talked about the difference in the consumption of wealth of the white European countries versus the countries of color, and who controls the power of the world. And even right before Dr. King died, he was trying to lead a poor people's campaign, calling for the redistribution of wealth, and he asked a pivotal question of why the top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90%. And as long as he said integration, 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 they loved him. But when he got to the critical issues, both domestically and internationally, he was assassinated.
That and many people suggest that that's exactly the reason why.
Yes.
It was almost like,
yes,
we can take you wanting to sit at our lunch counters, we can
that's
take
right,
you wanting to get a hotel on the white side
right,
of town, but don't start messing with my money,
right,
or you're going to have problems. And some people suggest that that's what happened. That speech, Tyrone, that Ted made reference to, April the 4th, 1967, exactly 1 year before his assassination at Riverside Church. The speech was entitled, sermon was entitled, Why I Oppose the War in Vietnam. Many people, Tyrone, say that Iraq is on the road to becoming the Vietnam of our generation. What are your thoughts on that comparison, and are we on the road to our own Vietnam?
Well, first let me say that I do agree with the assessment of why Dr. King was assassinated. Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that, and I think the media, in their attempt to pigeonhole us as a community and as a race, want to just focus on that narrow piece of what Dr. King was talking about with regard to race relations. But there was more, and like you said, when he started talking about foreign affairs with regard to the United States, then you saw Dr. King, his untimely demise. But I don't think that I think that when people compare Vietnam to Iraq, I think they do so because they are uninformed with regard to what Vietnam was all about. I'm not sure if everyone who makes the comparisons understands the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was basically a contrived incident.
Was Iraq contrived?
Well, you would have to ask people who are no longer here, including those people who were gassed in Halabja by Saddam.
But I think the question is the rationale, though.
Just don't try to help them out.
No, I'm not trying to help them.
I'm just saying.
Okay, go ahead.
Those people in Halabja who were gassed and subsequently died or were horribly
Well, why don't we go to
disfigured,
war then?
because
If you're saying that that's the reason why we went to war, why don't we go to war then?
the reason,
why go to war now?
The reason that was given for going to war was because there were weapons of mass destruction. And it never ceases to amaze me how the left will say, well, he didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. But then, in light of the evidence of him actually using it, they'll say that, and then they'll also indict the first Bush administration for giving him weapons of mass destruction, which was done in the war to aid Africa
Let me ask you a
war against
question.
Iraq.
Since when has the United States ever stood against using weapons of mass destruction? Nobody has ever used more weapons of mass destruction than whites and Europeans, whether it's chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. They're the biggest makers, manufacturers, profiteers of weapons of mass destruction, and the biggest users of weapons of mass destruction. I'm not falling for that when they used it in World War I, they used it in World War II, they used it in Vietnam War. The only country that was crazy enough to use nuclear weapons was the United States of America. Since when are we angry and upset about the use of weapons of mass destruction?
Well, I would say that some of us are really concerned about it subsequent to the events of September 11th, which has shown that the Pacific and the Atlantic no longer protect us from acts of violence on American soil. And if you take a look at some of the people who died on September 11th in just in the World Trade Center, for example, it was irrespective of color, creed. It was just death. If you look at the embassy bombings in Africa, which was one of the reasons for the attack on Somalia last week. If you look at that,
one of the official reasons.
But tie 9/11 to weapons
reason
of mass
nonetheless.
destruction. We were talking about weapons of mass destruction.
And the reason,
what does 9/11 have to do with the weapons?
You know
of
what?
mass
Good question,
destruction?
because I'm getting tired of Republicans and those trying to hold the party line and trying to hold the rationale connecting the two. Last night, Joe Lieberman, and this is not just Republican, Joe Lieberman, I was watching Meet the Press, the last edition was on MSNBC last night, replay. And Lieberman is, again, making that connection. Now, 9/11, weapons of mass destruction, over and over again. And to me, man, it just sounds like they just want to keep that image in the minds of the American people.
well, I think it's an image that should stay in the minds of the American people. Next time you go to see a blockbuster movie and you're sitting there waiting for the opening credits to roll, think about what security precautions you went through to get into the theater. And I'm sure you'll come up with absolutely none. And then think about that with regard to the guy sitting 3 rows down with a backpack on.
But
Now, he may have juju beans in it, but it's quite possible that he could also have an explosive device.
But how long, Tyrone, are we going to continue to hear 9/11, 9/11, 9/11? Because what's happening is, I see it being used as an instrument, a component of the politics of fear. As long as you keep people afraid, then you can take away their rights, you can abuse their privacy, you can reinstate COINTELPRO.
I totally disagree. For one thing,
I mean, are we going to be
with
50
regard-
years? Are we going to be 50 and 60 years old still hearing about 9/11?
I'm
not living like that.
I think that from a historical context, we should continue to hear about it and all the other historical things
Right,
that
but
matter.
they're being used, though.
If people are living in fear of this new reality, which is what it is, this is our reality that we will live in until the end of our days. Hopefully our children will not. But it is possible that I was in Paris a few years back, and the reality of it is, with past terrorist events that have gone on over there, that you could be on the Paris metro and you could be involved in a terrorist.
But let me ask you a
And
question.
down right now where we are.
It could, and are you afraid of that?
Right.
I'm not, and I can't act like that.
But let me say, I
But
have
it
a
cannot
question
be
for you.
used to control
I have
the
a
direction.
question for you.
Hold on, because I know we're probably wrapping up. We got a few minutes left. Let me do 2 minutes. Let me do this real
Okay.
quick, Ted, real quick. Because you brought up Dr. King, a man, and I think people need to remember that before civil rights activist and leader, he was a Christian minister. And during that time, when he came out against the Vietnam War, he was attacked by even other Christians who were speaking out against it. And around that same time, we had Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers ever, come out and say, listen, I'm not going over there. He was stripped of his title, had to do some time. He said, a Viet Cong never called me nigger. I'm not going over there, whatever, whatever. He said also that his faith precluded him from being involved. I want to know, can a person of faith support what's going on in Iraq right now? Because there are some Christian denominations that have justification for when war is necessary and support war.
Well,
I want to know from each of you.
I'd like to answer that question.
Can a person of faith,
I'm
whether Jewish, Muslim,
I'm going to answer that with a question.
Okay.
The Roman Empire was ruling the quote-unquote known world when Jesus Christ was born into the world. How many wars did Jesus Christ or his disciples champion?
0.
Tyrone, can a
0.
person of faith, whether they be Christian, Muslim, Jewish, can a person of faith be supportive of the war in Iraq?
I think that...
not can they, I mean they can, but
yes,
with that, you know what I'm saying?
I think they can. I think absolutely they can. And
On
I'll
what
take another
grounds?
I'll take another biblical reference.
Okay, all right.
It's quite clear that God was on the side of King David, and all of
Oh man!
and you know, I know that
we're in a Gentile nation, right?
Don't do this in 2 minutes left in the show, man.
We're in a Gentile nation.
If you're trying to make the point that God is totally opposed to war, then I think if you also are familiar with even the most obvious stories from the Bible, you would know that that is not true.
Well, let me ask you this question. If you go through the prophecies in the books of Daniel and the beasts that are used and the symbols, they're using beasts in a chronology of imperialistic kingdoms. Whether it is they go from Babylon to Medo-Persia to Greece to Rome, imperial systems. And even when they talk about the incarnation of the devil taking bodily form in Revelation's 13th chapter, the devil in bodily form is the Roman Empire. These people that are in power now are calling for Pax Americana. www.newamericancentury.org. Check it out for yourself if you don't believe me. These leaders are calling for that, calling for trying to follow after the incarnation of the devil that the Bible calls for. And Revelation 13, read it for yourself.
Jump caverns of reason and go from what these people in the New American Century, which is a group I'm familiar with, advocate.
You're not a member.
No, I'm not.
I was about to say.
But,
are they not calling for Pax Americana?
They may be calling for that, but there are some liberal groups that are calling for homosexual marriage. That does not mean that...
okay, that's apples and oranges.
Hold on.
Apples and oranges.
Why did he do that?
The comparison is, it does not mean that just because a liberal group would call for that, say, Hillary Clinton would go forth and advocate that once she's elected, if she's elected to the presidency.
Gentlemen, we got to wrap it up. We got to go. Time is up. Oh, my Lord, I wish we could continue. But we know the discussion is going to continue where you are. We certainly pray that it does, because it needs to be explored, in my opinion. People of faith need to find their voice on what's going on. Whether, some say they support it, some say they're against it, whatever. I say, people of faith, get together with your deacons, your ushers, your mothers of the church, and have a discussion. Don't let the parade go by without you saying something about going on. And thank you, Ted, for showing this. Citizen King, one of the greatest documentaries on Dr. King that shows not just the I Have a Dreamer, but the man who speaks to international issues, economic issues as well. If you have a chance, pick it up, buy from a black bookstore, support us. I'm going to close with a hint at my own opinion on this war, that I believe and follow Jesus Christ. And Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers.
That's right.
For they shall be called the children of God. And in my life, I'm just trying to be a peacemaker. I'm not trying to be popular. I'm not trying to be celebrated in politics. I'm trying to be a peacemaker, because Jesus says, they shall be called the children of God. He also says, you've heard it said before, to love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But Jesus says, I say unto you, love your enemies. Now, I'm not, don't get mad at me. If you want to get mad at anybody, get mad at Jesus. Crack open your Bible and argue with Jesus about it. But thank you so much for checking out this edition of BrothaSpeak. I feel like keep on talking about this.
Well, I just want to say to the audience that is one part of the Bible that Heber endorses and believes in.
That Jesus,
not every part is classified as that.
Whoa.
Thank you for joining us on BrothaSpeak. Please tune in next time. We need to hear you. Please send us feedback as well. Special thank you to Brother Obi Linton, the creator of Black TV Online. Without him, this would not be possible. We appreciate him yielding himself to God, I believe, to create this venue for us to have these discussions. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time right here on BrothaSpeak.